traditional territories, Stala, Nakamluk, and Statlium peoples. Because this land is unceded, the organization is committed to fostering more meaningful relationships and working more closely with all First Nation communities. This agenda and anticipated discussions will be mindful of the organization's role toward reconciliation. So with that in mind, I would like to call to order the December 8th, 2022 meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee. The first item on the agenda, of course, for our December meetings is the election of the chair. So to facilitate this election, I would like to ask for a first call of nominations for chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee. Director Dixon.
I would like to I'd like to nominate Director Bill Dickey.
Thank you, Director Dixon. Director Dickey, do you accept this nomination? Thank you. For a second time, are there any other nominations for the position of chair for the Electoral Area Services Committee? For a third and final time, are there any other nominations for the position of chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee? Hearing none, I now close the nominations and declare that there will not be an election and confirm that Director Dickey is elected chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee. So at this time, I would like to ask that Director Dickey take the position of chair at the table and chair the rest of the meeting. But I would also ask the chair to direct staff to facilitate the election of vice chair. Thank you, Chair Dickey. So I will now call for nominations for the position of vice chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee. Director Davidson.
I'd like to nominate Director Taryn Dixon.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Director Dixon, do you accept this nomination? Thank you. For a second time, are there any nominations for the position of vice chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee? For a third and final time, are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee? Hearing none, I now close the nominations and declare that there will not be an election and confirm that Director Dixon is elected vice chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee. So if you would like to take that position, Vice Chair Dixon, and Chair Dickey, you now have an opportunity to provide your remarks as chair of the Electoral Area Services Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman, and thank you everyone for your misplaced confidence in me being chair. But it's great to see a lot of fresh new faces here. I think we've got more or less 5 out of 8 new directors. So we're going to have an interesting time, and good to see us approaching closer to gender equity. I think we've got 3 ladies now, and we were at one time, I think, just one lady. So that's great to see. I always am very impressed by the electoral areas because I always say that the municipalities have got the population, but we've got the real estate, and we're looking after an area the size of Texas here with some of the most beautiful scenery and outdoor recreation potential in the world. So it's an exciting place to be, and we have a great staff here that really knock themselves out to make us look good and keep us out of trouble. So I think all the pieces are in place for us to have a very interesting 4 years coming ahead of us, and entertainment is assured. So thank you everyone once again, and look forward to working with all of you. And I'll turn things back to our CEO.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. So just looking for approval of the agenda, and late items. And we do have a request to remove item 8.8 at the request of the applicant.
Okay, good. So looking for a motion on the agenda. Move Director Castle, second Director Makahonic. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Item 4.1 is the draft Electoral Area Services Committee meeting minutes of October 13th, 2022.
Okay. Anything anyone would like to talk about? We've got a motion. Move Director Dixon, second Director Wardenberg. Any discussion on the minutes? Not seeing any. All in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Item 5.1 is the Cultus Lake Evacuation Guide for Electoral Area H. This is an information item, but we're happy to discuss.
Good. Looking forward to this. Looking for a motion. Oh, it's information only. Any comments or discussion?
My apologies, Chair Dickey. I did not note that there was actually a staff presentation associated with this
Oh,
item.
oh,
My
great.
apologies.
Welcome, Trina.
Thank you for having me present on this. It's been a long time coming to bring this one together. And for those of you who are new here, welcome to the board. Welcome to the Electoral Area Services Committee. I look forward to getting to know you over your time and our time together. This project started well before I started with Fraser Valley Regional District, and I think it goes back at least approximately 6 years. So it's really nice to bring it to at least this point where we can publicize it. I'd like to walk you through a very brief presentation on a little bit of the complexities of evacuation planning in comparison to what we often hear as evacuation plans. Plans are a little bit more rigid in emergency management, and we often don't know what the hazards are, so we need to look at how we plan and empower decision-making in an emergency operations center instead of how we write a plan that tells the public exactly what to do. To set our scope, there are different pieces and terminologies that we use in emergency management. We focus in emergency management on emergencies and disasters, which are defined in the Emergency Preparedness Note, the Emergency Program Act. And incidents are typically handled by first responders at an incident scene within their capabilities, within the resources that they have, and we don't deal with them because first responders are already dealing with those. Now, that being said, when we have an emergency and disaster, there may be a myriad of incidents ongoing, but I don't know day to day what happens in fire departments and policing and search and rescue until the point that we actually have an emergency or a disaster. Notably, we're looking at emergencies and disasters, we understand what our role is for evacuating, but we wouldn't have evacuation plans that apply to emergencies or to incidents. We have many waterways. We have developed areas with very few ways out. We have high risks across the geography. We have different risks depending on whether you're in a valley, whether you're at the top of a mountain, whether you're on a slope, whether you're near a waterway. We have unknown aspects of climate change. We have regional services, sub-regional services, and then we have services for electoral areas only. Emergency management planning for Fraser Valley Regional District is focused on electoral areas only. We don't provide EM services to municipalities or First Nations, but when we activate, we may call upon staff that provide services through regional and sub-regional services. And then a notable caveat to our evacuation planning is that the people that we rely upon for evacuating our residents are also our residents. They're volunteers of services. And if they are in an area where there is an impact, it's also likely that their home and family could be facing the same impact and increasing the demands upon them, both as a responder, as a resident, and as a volunteer. The evacuation guide that is presented to you today was funded through provincial grants. It's not something that we had allocated direct resources to at the point that it began, and it's had no shortage of its own challenges in getting the work done beyond the scope of what the grant funded. Grants that we apply for these projects put us competitively competing against our neighbor municipalities, member municipalities, and First Nations. There's no guarantee that we get the grants, even when we put forth the effort to scope a project and apply for those grants. So I'm sharing that with you today because it helps set the expectation when you're looking at this specific Cultus Area H EVAC guide. Each grant has maximum eligibilities. It has scope of focus on what projects we can provide. The projects often cost more than what the grant covers. Timelines are usually 12 months or tighter. And when we apply for the grants, they may, if we're rewarded those grants, have work plan impacts on other departments that we may not have factored in at the time of work planning and budgeting, because the grant timelines don't actually align with our corporate budgeting processes. And every single one of these grants has a different timeline. They're not all aligned naturally. Little bit of accountability and oversight, just for those of you who are new and understanding what this means. We have an emergency management executive committee. It is enacted by bylaw. It's an internal authority. It provides oversight to our emergency management program. It has the authority to direct interdepartmental initiatives. So say we have a grant, we've got an approved project, we know that it's going to have work plan elements from mapping and IT and communications. It allows that internal directive body to push those projects forward and gives us the ability to leverage higher level decision making. It also provides a pre-approval level on plans, policies, and bylaws for our emergency management program. This committee is assembled of our Chief Finance Officer, our Director of Emergency Management, and our Chief Administrative Officer, and then myself as a participant. Just let you pause on that one for a moment. We have a lot of directors. So you guys are directors, we have staff directors. In emergency management, we have directors too. So day to day, we have Graham Daniluz, who is our Director of Planning Development, but he also has a bylaw responsibility wearing a functional hat as a Director of Emergency Management. And then when we enact a disaster response or an emergency operations center, an EOC also has a director. And our EM bylaw empowers an EOC director to make decisions on behalf of the board to enable us to respond quickly and save lives. We have a lot of response considerations, as anyone would. Municipalities have a few more assets than we do when we start factoring in how we respond. Some of the limitations that we have in the regional district are shared authorities that are quite complex. We don't have authorities over our roadways or waterways. Many of the infrastructures are not owned or operated by us. We don't have public works. We have improvement districts to which they have a scope and authority unto their own. But we actually don't have an administrative directive or oversight of those bodies during disasters. And some of those that are really relevant are the improvement districts responsible for diking in the Fraser floodplain areas. We have a lack of transit services in some of our farthest reaches, and that causes complexities for people who don't have vehicles during evacuations. And we lack owned buildings. In a municipality, it's very standard that you know that you have these facilities you can send people to when they evacuate. In the regional districts, we have very few of the facilities that we would rely on to send people to. We do have opportunities that we can look at in our emergency management program. We have very strong and capable, dedicated volunteer fire departments. And there are two other fire departments that aren't FVRD fire departments. We've got Sunshine Valley and Cultus Lake Park Board. Each of them may act as an arm in our disaster response. We have neighborhood and community associations, and you see improvement districts reflected here as an opportunity. We're exploring how improvement districts can have a little bit more support through our emergency operations center and how we can lean on them for more critical information during evacuations and during disasters. There are neighborhood associations that have an interest in neighborhood public safety. And then we also have a lot of really great rural resilience among our citizens. People are accustomed to having power outages. They're accustomed to living off of wells and septic tanks, and they have a little bit more independence than people who necessarily rely on the standard urban grid. We have a lot of players in the emergency management realm. Again, many of them focus on incidents. Authorities and agencies are intriguing when we start looking at what is what and what is up to us. And those are just a few of the major authorities that exist within FVRD and have scope for incidents and incident response, but could also be participants in an evacuation scenario. BC Wildfire Service may inform us of a hazard that needs to be evacuated from. Police may do the same. Fire as well. If our fire teams are empowering a decision locally and they realize that there is an imminent threat, they can ask us to stand up our EOC and look at evacuation planning. They can ask for help and we can provide that. This is a very public number, and I give it to you, and I can share it later. I give it to you because of the depth that this number is. The province has its own dispatch center, essentially. When we have an emergency, we call this number so that we can get what's called a task number. A task number acts as an incident number and allows us to start tracking costs and figuring out what is eligible, what is billable. Day to day, this number can be used by anyone, including public. If they're driving through an area and they see a spill over land or waterway, they see flooding, maybe it's a creek that's jumped its banks. Who's responsible? We don't know who's responsible right off the hop in many scenarios. And so by having this number handy, it empowers us to empower our public to report through the proper channels for reporting. And that will prevent scenarios where you're calling staff and maybe not getting an answer, maybe we're on vacation. It's at least getting tracked the right way. The back end of this is that the provincial dispatcher will notify the most appropriate jurisdiction or agency for that type of event. Specifically, when we're talking about evacuations, there are tactical evacuations that exist before FVRD will ever issue a state of local emergency and evacuation orders. Sometimes these happen because the speed of an event and a first responder agency recognizes there is an imminent hazard and people must go now. These are a little bit less planned. They don't have the same documentation, but when they happen, we need to be informed so that we can follow suit with the right documentation. So we can enact an EOC, we can stand up the space where we bring all the players together in our staff and all those other agencies, and we make decisions for the best outcome of those responses. Police and fire each have tactical evacuation authorities under their independent statutory frameworks. This is the map of Fraser Valley Regional District. Any area that's reflected in purple happens to be within an area that is protected by a fire department. You'll see there's a lot of land that doesn't fit within the area of a fire department. So who are the first responders in those areas? Sometimes it might be a conservation officer. Sometimes it's RCMP. Sometimes RCMP dispatches search and rescue. There are many areas that we have that do not have a first responder, and we rely heavily on our public to inform us of what they see and to report it through proper and official channels. A key message I would like you to take home today is that if you are having reports of a dangerous situation that has threat to life and property, ask your residents who are telling you to hang up, call 911 and remove themselves from that situation. Go to a safe place. That allows all the official processes to start happening. And what comes next from me? We have an emergency management executive committee meeting scheduled for, I believe it's next week. Part of that agenda is looking at our service level for emergency management, reviewing the 5-year work plan, and a little bit of discussion about the Emergency Program Act modernization. That EPA modernization is a little bit unknown to us. We sit on the advisory committee advising the province on the legislative modernization, and yet we still aren't quite sure what's to come when that legislation is updated. So it's an intriguing piece to factor in that changes are coming and we anticipate more work, but we don't know quite yet what that work means. And then in the new year, we'll have an EA Director's Emergency Management Workshop. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Ms. Colleges, are there any questions from directors or any discussion? Director Castle.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. Through the chair to staff, your report lays out an evacuation guide for Area H. It also talks about putting together an evacuation guide. Obviously, my question is, where are we at with the other areas and the completion of that guide?
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Castle. It's an intriguing question. We are looking forward to future grant opportunities. The next grant for evacuation planning doesn't come into play for eligible application until mid to end of April. And we actually don't know yet what the parameters are the province has established for us in applying for that grant stream. Currently it's titled and it has a deadline, but they haven't scoped out what we can apply for it for. So at this point, the aim is that we stay focused on getting this one wholly done, finalize the little bits and pieces. And part of the 5-year work plan does include a phased approach to electoral areas. Some electoral areas are too vast to do one conglomerate aspect. And so I would really ask you to understand the expectations. 6 years of work did go into that document, and it wasn't easy to come to, and it has a lot of players that go into it. And I can't anticipate that we'll be fast at getting these documents out. And I would also add the caveat that we're not required under the Emergency Program Act to have specific evacuation plans. We are required to have processes that enable an EOC to make decisions under duress in tight timelines based on the information that is presented to us. So a lot of what has been done in this Area H guide can become the preamble oversight of a primary guide, and some of the Area H specifics can be sectioned off as an appendix to Area H specifics. That will allow us to look at the rollout through the 5-year work plan, and as and when grants are available to look at that work, then we will factor that in.
Thank you. And through the chair, so this is the first one. Excellent. And I noticed that little part of Area G that's on Sumas Mountain, that's on the Crown land, showing no fire department. Does that fall under BC Coastal then?
It does, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Castle. Director Adam.
Thanks very much, Trina, through the chair to everyone. Couple things. You've been working with some of the individual areas within Area B, Yale, for example, and you've been working with our chief in Sunshine Valley. Do you ever coordinate with all of them at the same time or at the same table because of the overarching issues that we deal with?
Thank you. It's a great question. Maybe I'll start by introducing that within our organization, we also have a Trina, who is the manager of fire protection, protective services. So I don't do a lot of integration with our FBRD fire services. I would go through our staff that are responsible for our fire pieces and fire representation. I do engage with the Sunshine Valley Fire Department as well as the Cultus Lake Fire Department, because they have an adjunct arm of public safety that doesn't necessarily filter through the same path when we have a state of local emergency. A lot of the projects that are ongoing among those community partner agencies and groups have had a little bit of me providing some intelligence and oversight. Remote, removed, it's not part of my work plan. It's really a great public demand, and we empower public initiative, but we do have community preparedness on our, I believe it's our 2024 work plan, to build a proper framework that empowers rolling forward with community-led preparedness and response.
Thank you. I had to think of something else there, but so is there something that you would, as a newcomer to this position, is there something that you would recommend an area director to start looking into in terms of trying to establish perhaps a team in all of these remote areas? Or is that something that you want us to stay away from?
I would ask you to eagerly wait for what comes next of community-led preparedness. We do need to scope something appropriately so that it succeeds from the ground up. Over the years, FVRD has had a number of evolutions of community programs, neighborhood programs, search programs, independent teams. Most have followed some sort of organic process, but they've never really been successful long-term because there just isn't enough upfront to keep them supportive. So we will roll them out in a way that makes a more appropriate sense. And as you can understand, the Lytton wildfire really had a lot of people afraid of what happens when you don't have an evacuation plan, and have somehow tied the drastic gravitude of Lytton to not having a plan, instead of the fact that a wildfire did what wildfires do. It doesn't matter what your plan is, that scenario would not have been any different that day if you had a plan.
Thank you.
You're
Good.
welcome.
Thank you, Director Adam. Or Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would certainly want to thank Ms. College for her work on this. It's been a huge project, and a lot of time and effort has gone into it. So thank you. I do know it will be well received in my community, and I can see hopefully that a lot of it can potentially be used for the other areas as well. Last night I mentioned to our Ratepayers Association that this was on the agenda tonight, and they were pretty happy to see that. I see it's on a public agenda, so I'm assuming it's available for me to share and send off in that way. All right, and again, it's a great document, represents my area well, and thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. And Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Ms. Coolidge. A couple things on the map that had the FERD fire coverage. I noticed that Pit Lake I couldn't see on it, and that is our far western perimeter, and there are people there and there are homes there. So, and this comes back to, I think Mr. Schellenberg was reaching out my way looking for contact info there. So I would ask that you don't forget about them. The other thing too, just that I appreciate that you have to prioritize and prioritizing with area H, it's all good. It would be very helpful to know who's next and when do you hope to get that, and so I can share that information with the community. I think the general perception is, and I appreciate a lot of this is driven by the transition from PEP to EMDC and how that sort of impacted the local emergency coordinator positions that we used to have some years ago. But the general perception is that things aren't as robust as they once were when it comes to the whole emergency management scene. So yeah, any information we can share about when to expect planning processes, anything like that would be helpful. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Maybe I would just add, for the benefit of the new directors, some of the history around emergency management here at the regional district. I think when I first came here about 20 years ago, there was a flood event that really impacted the Hatzic Valley. And I think we hired a special person to clean up after that. And it was just finally getting rolled up, and we had our next event. It's about 2 years later. And then things really went quiet for quite a long time, it seemed. And then last November, the windmill collided with the outhouse, and things just really blew up in our face here. And trying to get normal staff work done became very difficult because everyone was working, trying to clean up after this event. And we had houses floating down rivers and creeks running through people's front doors and out the back door, and a number of homes impacted by landslides. So we have the real estate, but we also have some very complicated real estate here. So be prepared, is maybe what I should say. Good. Thank you again, Ms. Collins. Sure. And turn things back to our CEO. Yeah, Director Davidson. Go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot one thing I just wanted to ask. And it just comes back to the funding side of it. And I know you mentioned that, you know, the grants have limitations. They often don't cover the cost of the work. But it's all coming out of one service area. And that sort of implies that we take turns, but the cost might vary. I have no idea if it's appropriate. I'm just encouraging you to bring it forward if it becomes appropriate to start advocating on smaller service areas by electoral area, just so that if for whatever reason making progress in one electoral area is barred by funding, but the funding will move something forward in another service area, that we're not sort of caught up in that whole cycle. So it's just something to consider. I'm certainly not advocating it. I just want to hope we keep it in mind as a possibility if funding becomes a barrier to moving things forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Davidson, parts of our corporate history included very different service areas that were a little bit more localized, and it struggled to actually move projects forward and to move projects forward in an equitable manner based on our hazards. So I don't know that we'll be going backwards in the same way that we have come from. But we certainly are gleaning opportunities. And of course, with that APA modernization, there may come different funding opportunities from the province as well. And we noticed that over the course of the last year, the grant maximum eligibility went up a little bit. So we anticipate seeing potential growth in the funding areas. But again, some of the pieces that we do in these projects can be harmonized with internal process and may actually allow us to move things forward. It's more for me a management of setting expectations. I am a team of one and I now have a 0.6. But again, with us being the size of Texas, which I didn't realize and never factored, I equate us to being the size of Prince Edward Island. That's a lot of land to cover and not a lot of land that actually requires us to have plans for evacuations as much as knowing the processes to enact evacuations. And a world of emergency management can become very document laden, or we can shift our focus to operational readiness and preparedness and greater community preparedness. So thank you for the opportunity to share that. And I've made some notes to follow up on.
Good. Thank you again, Ms. Call. Very important service that we have here. Thanks again. Good. Turn things back to our CAO.
Thank you. Item 6.1 is a motion for which notice has been given, and it is agenda publishing dates put forward by Director Davidson.
Good. Director Davidson, did you? Okay. That is a motion? Yeah, okay. Yeah, a seconder, looking for Director Adamo, seconds. Director Davidson, go ahead.
So thank you, Chair. So yeah, the history on this, and this is more for the newer directors, but in the previous term, agendas were being published essentially late on the week before. We'd have a few days, usually 5 days between the agendas being published.
I think you're guilty of the same thing I've been accused of. Maybe talk closer to the microphone, Director Davidson.
Okay. So yeah, winding back on the history of this, previous term, under the previous procedures bylaw, agendas were essentially coming out late last week, late of the preceding week before the week of the meeting. I'm not sure if that came out right, but with the change to the procedures bylaw, they're now coming out Monday and for meetings on Thursday. My own practice previous term was that the agendas would come out, I'd look at it, I sort of filter it based on what I thought was important and relevant to my community. I'd push it out on my email distribution list. A couple of people there would push it onto Facebook pages. The community would generally have the weekend to digest it, get back to me with any feedback. Now that's just not happening. 3 days is just basically a shorten that curve pretty significantly for me. And this, staff had advised us of this change in the staff report that came along with the procedures bylaw change, and I consider it a goof on my part that I missed it. But I think we need to go back to making sure that the agendas are coming out at least the week before the meeting, so we have time to have that community engagement. That's the gist of the motion.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Any further discussion?
Dixon.
Yeah, Director Dixon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I have found is I've had to retrain myself a little bit to certainly understand what Director Davidson is saying. I think there might be an opportunity. I'm just wondering if there is any feedback from the staff, if that's appropriate, as to how is this feasible, or if it would be impacting them in any way that maybe we haven't considered.
Sure. Through the chair to Director Dixon. So in terms of the background of how this happened, previously meetings were held on Tuesdays. And so the agendas would have come out on a Thursday, and the practice had been to do the 4 days prior. So when the changes to the procedures bylaw came forward that we were going to be holding meetings on Thursdays, that same practice held true, and that agendas were being published on a Monday. I think that from a staff perspective, to publish an agenda a week in advance, one of the concerns that I would have is that reports that are contained within an agenda are not necessarily written the day before your agenda is published. There are many weeks in the making. And so the longer the time period in between a publication date and the actual meeting, there is often a change in that information. And so by the time you would come to the meeting, it's quite likely that there would be new information to share. However, that being said, we certainly do take Director Davidson's feedback into consideration. And what I would propose is perhaps we could split the difference, and we would be comfortable publishing agendas on a Friday. So that would give the community an opportunity to preview any agenda items over a weekend, but it would still give staff at least an extra day to make sure that everything is current and relevant.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. Director McMahon.
Do I have to say through the chair? I'm new at doing this
Don't
through the
worry
chair.
about it.
Anyway, that was going to be my suggestion as well, but I think that would be really helpful, especially for people like the newer ones to really go through it thoroughly. So thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director McMahon. So it seems like we might have a consensus here. You'd like a amendment to the original motion? Director Davidson, would you have something like to bring forward to us?
Friday is totally fine. I'm just cranking my head on how to wordsmith the amendment to the motion.
So that staff be given direction to bring the agendas out on the Friday prior to the Thursday meeting. Yeah, you could support something like that, Director Davidson.
Absolutely.
So that's a mover, and we've got a seconder on the amendment, Director Dixon. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, contrary, motion carries, and we're good.
Then on the vote on the main motion
The main
as
motion.
amended.
And we've got a motion, so it's just a vote. All those in favor, contrary, motion carries. Thank you.
Perfect.
for
Thank you
walking us
very
through that
much.
Stuff.
So moving down to item 7.1, we have grant and aid processing. This is an information item, but I'm sure staff would be happy to discuss.
Okay, so that is general motion. Who would like to make a motion?
No motion is required, Chair.
That's
Dickey's,
information,
just an
excuse me.
information,
Yep,
but
any discussion on
discussion.
the grant aid process? Director Dixon, go ahead.
Just a question more, hopefully it's appropriate. Typically, if a grant aid is, I think over $4,000, they're required to report on it. And it seems to me at some point in the year, as EA directors, we get information around who has and who hasn't done that reporting. I'm just looking for information around when that typically happens, and if there's some way we can help you with getting the feedback you need.
I see that Beth Klein has put her camera on. I'm assuming that she is the best one to answer this question.
Yep, so through to the chair, we actually reach out around year end for the reports back, depending on the applicant's use of the funds. Sometimes we can reach out earlier, but it's usually around now or the beginning of January. And then the expected report is to come to board in February.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Klein. Thank you, Director Dixon. We'll go to Director Castle and then go ahead, Director.
Thank you through the chair. And this is just for clarification. The report states that grant applications are accepted continuously throughout the year, with the exception of election years. And I see a number of grant applications next up on the agenda. I believe it's an election year. Just looking for a point of clarification, please.
Sure. Through the chair to Director Castle, I suppose we should have been a little bit more specific in the content of that. Typically in an election year, we would stop handing out money in the electoral areas to community groups through the election period. So I think that the cutoff was in July, and then we wouldn't be handing them out August, September, and October. But certainly now that the election period is over, grants and aids are accepted again. So thank you for pointing that out.
Good. Thank you, Director Castles. Director Adam.
Through the chair to staff, with respect to being new with this and grant and aids that have been approved previously through my predecessor, am I to attempt to follow up on all of these now and make sure the appropriate paperwork is submitted for accountability?
Would maybe Beth like to speak to that one?
Yeah, so finance does take that role on. So we'll reach out to all the applicants and request the information. If we don't hear back, sometimes we'll have to reach out to the EA director to assist with that part.
Great, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Klein. Thank you, Director Adamo. Any further discussion? This is an information item, so we'll turn things back to our CEO.
So 7.2, we have a 2022 grant and aid request for the Karrakatta Afrobeat Society of Canada in Electoral Area F.
Looking for a motion. This is Director Wardenberg. Oh, or excuse me, it's Director Davidson's. Go ahead. Get my alphabets right here.
Was there a second?
Pardon me? Or are you looking for a motion? Yeah, motion. Move Director Davidson, second Director Dixon. Go ahead, Mr. Director Davidson.
So just a question through to staff. The amount that I am comfortable supporting was less than the amount requested. Was there feedback from the applicant that they felt the event was still viable with that amount? That communication happened. I'm just concerned that we've approved an amount, but the event might not be viable based on what they first applied for.
We'll maybe turn things over to our finance team and Ms. Klein.
I can speak to that. I did let the applicant know the amount that that the electoral director was comfortable supporting, and they just said, thank you so much. So I didn't get any details, but I can let you know when we do hear from them.
When you mean after when you hear from them?
So if it got approved, we would follow up and let them know. But we don't necessarily always ask.
So I just to forestall you, they're aware that the amount was for less.
Yes, I communicated that. Yeah.
I support the motion. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Jones, and thank you, Director Davidson. Any other discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
7.3 is the 2022 grant and aid request for the McConnell Creek Farmers Institute in Electoral Area F.
Move Director Davidson, second Director Castle. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
8.1 is information pertaining to the evaluation of noise and particulate matter emissions associated with commercial gravel operations in the Fraser Valley Regional District. It's an information item, but I know that staff very much enjoyed doing this work and would love to discuss it with you.
Good. So on the gravel issue, Director Davidson, go ahead.
You can't keep me quiet when we're talking about gravel, I'm afraid. So when I'm reading the staff report, it's saying that dust monitoring was conducted along the property line. Dust and noise monitoring was done along the property line. I'm inferring from that monitoring was done along the street and the street only. I don't know if that's correct. I mean, was permission sought from neighbors to go do monitoring further away from the road, or was it just all road front monitoring? Just wondering if staff could shed any insight on that.
I think we'll turn things over to Mr. Daniels.
Thank you. Through the chair. In conjunction with our consultant, we look for the best sites to monitor it at 6 separate mine sites. And so we monitored at the road, certainly, but also at other locations surrounding the mine. It varied from mine site to mine site. And I'm afraid I couldn't say at the Stave Lake mine what those sites were, but our monitoring was not solely along the road frontage.
Okay. At some point, I guess I would like to know what it doesn't have to be now, but just the actual monitoring locations. And to me, it just seems that there would be a need for some sort of at least conversation with the neighboring properties to see where they're at with it. I don't know if that's happened or not, because, you know, when you look at Stave Lake Quarry, obviously it's the one of most concern to me. It is well set back from the road. But if you're a neighbor, that doesn't really matter. So any sort of insight information you can share with me would be appreciated. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Director Adamo.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, with respect to just the gravel pits that we're talking about, is this the same program that would apply to the farmers fields where I'm getting numerous complaints through Laidlaw right now with extreme dust issues? as a result of dry fields that are not being farmed at the moment? Is it the same type of program that's in place to determine whether or not that's having a major impact on the community?
Mr. Danilus, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. No, it isn't. The regional district adopted bylaw 1181, which is solely regulates commercial gravel operations and sets noise and dust standards for commercial gravel operations. We don't have similar bylaws that would apply to farming and other activities.
Thank you.
Good, thank you, Mr. Danilus. Thank you, Director Adamo. Just through to Mr. Danilus, maybe so that would fall under right to farm legislation, which is provincial and which is a rather weighty legislative item. Is that right?
It certainly is. Yeah, that would be just one of the challenges in regulating dust emissions, say from farm properties or agricultural operations.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Director, Mr. Danilus. Director Castle, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. I just want to make a comment that I appreciate the proactive nature of this sort of testing and look forward to future results. And I do also find the notations about the traffic noise on the highway. I think that's a very interesting observation, and I'm sure that residents of Lake Eric would be interested in that.
Good. Thank you, Director Castle, and thank you, staff, for a really good report. I'd never seen this map showing all the different gravel mines and didn't realize that Fraser Valley aggregates was so prevalent in FERD. Yeah, good. Thank you. So we are looking for, that's for information only.
It was just an information item, Chair Dickey, and I would just point out further to Director Adamo's comments that perhaps if the air quality monitoring project that was mentioned on the RAC's agenda this morning goes forward, there might be some opportunities there for that program to work with residents in the Laidlaw community in terms of particulate matter that might be, there might be some opportunities there. So we'll follow up with you on that.
Great, thank you. And we'll move forward.
8.2 is dust suppression measures on the first 1.5 kilometers of the Chehalis Forest Service Road in Electoral Area C. And again, it's an information item.
Good, thank you. This is Director Wardenberg's area. Sounds like a very positive evolution. Go ahead, Director Wardenberg.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to staff. I thank you for taking the initiative on doing this dust control. I hope it's just a beginning. I look forward to next year's project. I do live fairly close to this and directly impacted by the dust. Maybe you could put that on your when you do the dust surveys for the mines. Maybe put a quick test on that road once in a while and see where the dust is. That's just a comment. But I would look forward to and I thank the staff for working with the license holders of that road at this point in time, and look forward to you know, future controls. I know that it's done once so far. You know, if budget allows, I've talked to some people, you know, the more the merrier as far as the treatment goes during the course of the year. We would all appreciate it in the area. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Director Wardenberg. And that was an information. I know Director Castles, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Director Wardenberg's comments that I appreciate the work being done by staff. Anytime I see proactive, collaborative initiatives from staff, that makes me very happy. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Nice comment. Thank you, Director Castle. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll turn things to our CAO.
8.3 is a covenant for the proposed subdivision of 11402 Hodgkin Road in Electoral Area C.
For a motion, move Director Wardenberg, second Director Adamo. Discussion. Director Castle, please.
Thank you. I just a point of clarification. The motion reads to execute all the documents relating to the subdivision file. The report talks about the covenant only. Are we approving the subdivision or are we approving the covenant?
Hey, Mr. Daniels, did you have something to say?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The board would be approving only the covenant. The subdivision would be approved for the provincial approving officer for subdivision at the Ministry of Transportation. So in front of us today really is only the covenant.
Thank you for that clarification.
Good, thank you, Mr. Daniels. Thank you, Director Castle. And on the motion, and see no other discussion, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
8.4 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1681 to assign an amended general industrial zone to 54370 Bridal Falls Road in Electoral Area D.
For a motion, thank you, Director Dixon. Second, Director Castle. Any discussion? Seeing none, Director Castle, go ahead.
Again, just as a point of clarification, the report says that there's a mandate to terminate all of the land use contracts by 2024. I'm just wondering how many others are there? What does that process look like? Where are we at in that through the chair?
Mr. Downs.
We have 2 land use contracts in the electoral areas, one more in addition to what we have in front of you today.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Downs. Thank you, Director Castle. See no further discussion. All in favor, contrary, motion carries.
8.5 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1620 to facilitate the development of an indoor film production facility at 44390 Bayview Road in Electoral Area C.
Director Wardenberg moves. Second, Director Dixon. Discussion.
Yeah, I had some concerns, that have been, the chair through to staff, sorry. I had some concerns that have been alleviated, through some conversations with staff already. One of the concerns was that, we only went through one public, information meeting, but there was a couple notices prior to that, I've been informed, yeah, being that this item's been on the agenda, or previously, yeah, no, I don't see any point in holding it up. Look forward to the public hearing.
Good. Thank you, Director Wardenberg. So this is round 2 of a somewhat controversial application that came to the FERD. What was that, a month or 6 months or a year ago or something? Yeah. Good. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
8.6 is Development Variance Permit 2022-12 to reduce the interior lot line setback at 17600 Arbor Road in Electoral Area C.
A busy place. Looking for a motion. Move Director Wardenberg, second Director Castle. Any discussion? Go ahead, Director Wardenberg.
From the chair, through to staff, yeah, no, I have no comment on this. I know the property, been there, through other dealings. I guess the only comment I could make, is that if this, or what would happen, because from what I read, it's 110 square feet of this building is, subject to or imposing on the encroachment or on the, lot line or the setback, sorry. What if this, building is deemed, or if they tear it down? Or, because it's not, it has to go, from what I read, it has to go to a building, permit and has to be inspected by a building permit. So what if, the proponent or the, applicant, decides to just tear it down? It's gonna cost too much, then that would be my only comment. Other than that, yeah, it's just going through the process. They've done their job. I've looked at it. Yeah, I don't see a problem with it. It's a big acreage and in the support of the neighbors as well, and they've been there a long time. But once given, you can't take back. That would be my only concern here. But otherwise, I'm in favor of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Director Wardenberg. So you're interested in the process if the variances awarded and what would be required to bring the building within, proper. Maybe,
Because that's the only thing that's approaching, that's the line to see, correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah, Mr. Danilus, did you want to give us an idea of how this might roll out?
Please, thank you, Chair. I consider this a good news story. Property owners came on, discovered that there's a pre-existing bylaw enforcement file. This building was built without a permit and it doesn't meet the side lot line setback. And so the owners have been terrific to work with. They want to get the building permitted. They made a choice. They understood that one option would be, say, to demo the building. It's a accessory building, not of exceptionally high value, and demolishing the building, or at least demolishing the portion of the building that extends into the lot line, was an option available to them. But their choice was to seek this variance to allow the building to be located into the side yard setback. And they're working with our building team on getting the building permitted. They'll understand the costs associated with it. We would have talked to them about it, and this is their chosen path to proceed. But if any time they wish to change mind and demolish the part of the building that extends into the setback, we'd certainly work with them on it. With respect to the variance, it would apply only to this building and not to other accessory buildings that have been built or would be built in the future on the property. So there isn't a concern that we would be issuing a variance that would have some kind of future implication should the owners not proceed with permitting this building and instead demolish it.
Good, thank you, Mr. Danilus. Thank you, Director Wardenberg. So seeing no other discussion, all those in favor, contrary, the motion carries.
8.7 is Development Variance Permit 2022-13 to increase the maximum size and height for an accessory building at 10307 Woodrose Place in Electoral Area D.
Looking for a motion, move Director Dixon, second Director Castle. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, the motion carries.
9.1.1 is Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Emergency Support Services Grant. There is a motion for your consideration.
Okay, promotion. Move Director Castle, second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question. Is there any specifics around what you're applying for? Or did I miss it? And yes, I think you should apply for it too.
We'll just have Ms. College answer that question, but unfortunately, we just got to get her to a mic.
Thank you through the chair to Director Dixon. At this point, we haven't quite slated what that was going to be applied for. There is a tight deadline looking at holidays, Christmas vacations, everybody's absences. We wanted to make sure the application has the right endorsement so that we're not missing the deadline. And then we'll look at how we can support the work plan with that application if we're successful in getting that grant. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms. College. Thank you, Director Dixon. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Item 10.1 is an information item. It's the 2022 Fire Smart Summary. A successful program, I think, and we're happy to talk about it some more.
Director Castle, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. The report references 23 neighborhood wildfire hazard assessments. I wonder if we have access to those. I couldn't find them.
I'll just have Ms. Barker speak to that. I do believe that these are quite lengthy documents, and so I think that they can be made available to you, but I'll just turn things over to Stacy.
Thank you. Yeah, that's correct for sure. We can share these documents with the directors. We are sensitive to some of the information that's in these documents, and so they may not be shared publicly necessarily, but certainly we can share them with the director.
Thank you. I'll be following up on that. And again, looking forward to seeing more applications to fund this kind of program. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Castle. And that is an information item. So we'll turn things back to our CAO.
So moving down to item 13, which is reports by electoral area directors.
Good. So for anyone unfamiliar with this, at the end of the meeting, we typically go through each electoral area director and they can bring us up to date on any special events or anything noteworthy that's happening in their area. Maybe we'll let Director Castle start off.
Thank you, Chair Dickey, and my first report. So I'll share it, and then I'll be schooled later as to whether or not it was appropriate. In my first month as being the Area G Director, I had the opportunity to attend the inaugural meeting of the Mission Public School District, and looking forward to working closely with Electoral Area Trustee Carter, who was also elected chair of the board of Mission Public Schools. Trustee Carter and I have had some discussions already around working together to improve road safety around the Deroche and Dudney elementary schools. Also had an opportunity to attend an open house hosted by LaCamel and learned of some of the work that LaCamel is doing in terms of land stewardship and the development of their territory. LaCamel also invited Director Wardenberg and I to attend one of their council meetings. The purpose of this was meet and greet and to discuss some of the priorities, some joint priorities, which included traffic safety along Highway 7, wildfire protection and prevention, specifically the sale of fireworks within the electoral areas of the Fraser Valley Regional District during the drought. I was invited to visit the Sundorn residential development on Hatzick Island and heard some of the concerns from residents around zoning, permits, and the challenges in and around Hatzick Lake, which was also the focus of another visit I had to a property in the Sylvester Road area within Area G, which is seeing some drainage issues related to waterway management or the lack thereof in the Hatzick watershed. The Hatzick watershed was also a focus of a meeting I attended with Director Davidson, which was facilitated by EMBC and included MLA, now Minister Alexis, Mayor Horn, Rick McCamey representing LaCamel, and staff including CAO Kinnaman. The agenda of the meeting included discussion around the need for a recovery roundtable, which included comments about who wasn't at the table that needed to be, as well as identifying priorities to move forward with the recovery from the 2021 flooding in the Hatzick watershed. Though it was debatable whether we left with a feeling that recovery would include building back better, but nonetheless, a meeting occurred and it was decided that another meeting would happen in January. I also met with Minister Alexis to advocate for traffic safety, a traffic safety study along Route 7 from Mission to Agassiz. And I've been advised that Modi is working on this. It's good news. I'm looking forward to following up to see if that's true. MLA Alexis and I also discussed the Hatzick Lake watershed and wildfire management, including the open fire bans during the drought, including lifting the fire bans during the drought and the sale of fireworks in the electoral areas. Met with Inspector Luco of the Mission Detachment. It was time well spent brainstorming strategies to improve safety along Highway 7. I think that we have some action items that will help us achieve our goals, including sharing contacts for Modi. Inspector Luco indicated that he was going to reach out to Modi to see what sort of safety planning is being done. Was also very happy that Inspector Luco offered that he's able to provide data around traffic incidents along Highway 7 from Mission to Agassiz. So I've asked him to provide data for the last 10 years on that, so we can see what the trends are. And we talked about connecting with BC Highway Patrol and the Integrated Road Safety to see what they are currently doing with regards to Highway 7. I met with staff here at the regional district with the potential of a community water system in the Eagle, Davies, Sylvester Road area. And I followed up with a group of residents in the area and advised them of the process and next steps. Attended a public information meeting regarding the development proposal in Area C above Lake Eric that Director Wardenberg chaired. And he did a good job of that, even though he had a little bit of pushback there at one point during the meeting. We anticipate an application for that development coming to this table in the new year. I attended the FERD regional governance session, as many of you did as well, facilitated by Frank Leonard, where I learned the importance of remembering that the only thing we take to our grave is our family name. which was ironic since some members of the FBRD staff team have come to realize that my dad is a guy named Tom that lives on North Roche Road, which may or may not affect my ability to challenge or even live up to my family name here in this building. But Sterling, as a peace offering, I do have a pin here, compliments of Tom Castle from TW Excavating. I realize that's a bit of an inside joke, but if we can't have fun while we're at work, what's the point? Otherwise, in my first month of being a director, I think I've only upset 2 of my fellow EA directors, so I'm not doing too bad. And I look forward to getting to know you all better so that we can work collaboratively to help our neighbors. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director Castle. Director Davidson, that's gonna be a hard act to follow.
You're making me look bad, man. So yeah, attended the Hatzick watershed meeting as well. And what can one say? It's early days. I'm not sure where it's going to go. The only other thing I would add is that attended an open house by Emil Anderson Maintenance, and it was good. It was a small room, mostly public safety there, but it was an opportunity for me to sort of give some feedback about their communication. Or I think the challenge has been, at least for people in my community, is that you phone them up, you send them an email, and you won't hear back from them. A lot of that's to do with recent events in the atmospheric river, the aftermath from that, trying to recover from the recovery. But yeah, so it was a good opportunity to share some concerns, and of course they can't commit to anything. They can take it to the province and we'll see where it'll go. But my focus was around just improving the communication so that people know what to expect from them and when to expect it. Because right now it's a bit of a guessing game. But that was it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Director McAhonick.
Oops, thank you. So, yeah, that was quite a first report there. And yeah, I've been reaching out throughout the community, and people are getting to know me a little bit. Sometimes using my home number instead of my other number that I have put out there. But I've met with staff, Graham, as we had a meeting, and it was very, very helpful and informative. So thank you for that. See here, I've got to read my own notes here. I go to the Residents Association and do updates there. So I'm finding that, and I was a director on there before. I met with Jason Faulkner when I first started, just for proponent with the gondolas, and talked to Director Dickey and my predecessor about that before, just an information only. And then also with Patrick Weeb and a developer and a representative from Scarlett's information only meeting as well. And I have a meeting slated tomorrow with Allison Colthorpe from tourism, and it's been rescheduled to tomorrow, and David Urban. So we're going to be talking about stewardship committee in the Chilliwack River Valley. I'll be meeting with Chief Derek App and Mike Jimmy in the new year, talking about just working together and different things like that, kind of redeveloping some working relationships that I had when I did work for Stalo. So that's looking forward to that. Went to the Fish and Game Christmas dinner last night, and they're quite pleased that as a member, I'm the regional director. So just making sure those good relationships are kind of kept up. And I'll be going to the fire department AGM and with Christmas cookies next week and doing that. I met with MLA Padden, and we talked about some of the residents that are impacted and some news that she could share. So still pretty tenuous, but hopeful. So, and Graham and I talked about that as well. Called both our MLAs and wished them both congratulations on their new roles yesterday. Kelly as our new gender equity parliamentary secretary, and then Dan Coulter with his infrastructure cabinet postings. So did that. And what else do I have here? Yeah, and I really enjoyed, I think I shared this before maybe, but I'm not sure, going out with the previous Dave Lamson. He was director from 2005 to 2015. A little bit scary drive with him, but and I declined the ride on the tractor looking at the fish restoration project I hiked in. So, but really, really nice to kind of hear the backstories and things. So just doing those kinds of things. And also thank you for the dinner for the directors and staff. I really appreciated that and appreciate the chance to get to know more of the directors and staff. Just been made to feel very welcome, and just want to thank you all for that. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you, Director McElhaney. Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, of course, our great news in Area H was that we were successful for the infrastructure grant to build the Cultus Lake wastewater treatment plant. And that was a very exciting day, super thrilling to get almost $10 million and to get right on track with that project. And really, again, want to thank Mr. Islam and Ms. Kinnaman for all the work. And I know it's other stuff as well that has gone on just to keep that project up and running and now to get it going. So I'm looking forward to that. Cultus Lake Fire Department Columbia Valley Fire Department ran just an amazing food drive the other night, and they collected $6,400 almost in cash and two pickup truckloads of food. So that was just an outstanding success. There's a lot of generous people in our community, so it's pretty lovely. I attended Cultus Lake Christmas event where they lit the trees, and it's just beautiful up there. So make sure you have a chance, if you get a chance to drive up and see it. It's great. Santa Claus was there, but he's gone now, so you have to wait till December 25th. Coming up, we've got lots of fun events coming up in my area, which is great to see. And we've got cocoa and cookies up in the Columbia Valley Hall on December 18th, and December 16th, there's a Christmas concert at the Cultus Lake Memorial Church. So they're really starting to use that a little bit more, which is fabulous. I too wanted to thank the staff and all the people that went into organizing that amazing Christmas event. It was a lot of fun and a great location. So well done with that. And thank you. Really pleased to attend the Cultus Lake Park Board inauguration and starting a new term and working together with them. So looking forward to successes along the way with that. And that's about it for me. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. Boy, getting that grant has made all of us sleep a lot better. So thank you, Director Wardenberg.
Great, thank you. Corey mentioned a few things that we shared together. But yeah, that was interesting. And I did participate with the help of staff. I appreciate all the help on the two public information meetings that I was able to one chair, the other one attend. One to do with the OCP for Area C, and the other one to do with the development proposal for the Harrison Rise. I thought they went very well. And again, thank you, staff, for guiding me through that. What else I got? I did attend the open house at McConnell and the meetings with the chief or the council there. I did have a chance to talk to Chief Leon from the Stahelis First Nation in regard to a few things that they're doing. That's coming up in their community. Also with Joey Chapman from the Scouts and the things that are coming up there. Also had a chance, had a long conversation with Milo. Buckingham from Bears and Hospitality, the owner of Hemlock, or not Hemlock anymore, Sasquatch Mountain ski resort. Yeah, I had a lengthy conversation, a phone conversation with him. And he is looking forward to tentatively opening on December 14th. Weather permitting. Had a nice conversation with the GM of Sandpiper Resort as well. I look forward to a great Christmas season. They have a beautiful set of lights up there. If you have a chance, I'd recommend going to see it. And they're just finishing up on 7 new cabins. I look forward to their completion as well. Also the Sasquatch Inn is newly renovated and open for business. Been open for about a month already, but if you get a chance to get to the area, hope to see people going there for sure. As far as groups, I did have a chance to talk to. I haven't met with any of them. I did talk to them on phone with the Hemlock Valley Homeowners Association and Lake Erock Community, LECA, Lake Erock Community Association. Yes, so I did. What's that? And yeah, so I did mention, or I did have a good chance to meet with the with one of the representatives there. That's about it. Look forward to a very obviously busy next year for Area C. And thanks again to staff.
Great, very comprehensive report. Thank you, Director Wardenberg. Director Adam.
Thanks very much to everyone for all of your support in this first month. My first month, I've shoveled my driveway 3 times, helped 3 people out of ditches so far, and it's only December 8th. So you'll have many more of those stories throughout the rest of this winter. I was invited to attend the Yale ratepayers meeting where my incumbent was also present, so that wasn't awkward at all. But it was very good, and they've welcomed me, and we have a lot of work to do to start to build some new teams over there. I got to meet with the Sunshine Valley ratepayers as well at their annual meeting. Sunshine Valley Volunteer Fire Department's AGM invited me out, so I was there a couple of weeks ago, and they've got a great program going that we'll hear a lot more about. Had an opportunity to meet with the Bear Aware lady, Lydia Coote, whom many of you know already, and Conservation Society members. And we've just started to develop a new plan for the Sunshine Valley. As I mentioned this morning, we have a couple of major issues, being that Sunshine Valley specifically has more nuisance calls and bear removals than any other jurisdiction in all of Western Canada right now, any other regional district for sure. So we obviously have many challenges with that, trying to save the little black bears. But we're going to work hard together. We've developed a little plan that we'll be working on. I've been invited to attend a meeting with Chief Hansen from the Yale First Nation. He's reached out and we've had some conversations together. So we're looking forward to that. And really, that's it. Nothing like Corey. That guy is really busy. You don't have any snow in your area. But thanks everyone for the warm welcome, and I look forward to the next 4 years.
Great, thank you, Director Adamo. Nice to see our new directors hitting the ground running. Some very capable people we have here, so it's good to see. For the downtown Popcom area, a lot of commercial residential development going on right now for a tiny community. The planning and engineering departments are helping me to survive this process, so thank you very much. The only thing of note that I would say that has happened this last little while is I met with the people from the city of Agassiz and Harrison Hot Springs and the local First Nations about Highway 1 closures, which have happened forever in our community. And when that does happen, it turns our community into a parking lot. And so we've been speaking with the top level MOTI people about trying to find a way to keep the traffic moving and allowing our children to come home from school at the end of the day. So, yeah. Otherwise, I was wondering, staff, if you could put together a little list of the electoral area directors and their contact information so that it's available to us. And maybe if we could get a staff list, I think mine's a couple of years old and a lot of people won't have it. So try and keep up to date on staffing.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to do that.
Good. Other than that, I think that will take us through the director's reports.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. So item 14 is public question period for items relevant to the agenda, and we'll just turn things over to our corporate officer, Jamie Van Ness.
Good afternoon. We do have one member of the public joining us by Zoom this afternoon. So this would be your opportunity to ask a question relevant to the agenda and just hit that raise hand function. I will note we do not have anybody joining us in the boardroom today from the public. And it would appear that our member of the public does not have a question, so we can move on to the next item.
Good. Thank you. Ms. Kinnaman.
Looking for a resolution to close the meeting.
Motion, move Director Adam, second Director Dixon, all in favor, contrary motion carries.
Okay, we'll just recess and take a couple of quick minutes here to set up the room.